finally back to playing Red Thunder after a considerable amount of time back in Normandy, or back rather playing Black Sea, and this isn't because I dislike Red Thunder. It's more because I've had too many things to play, as well as of course my time's being relatively restricted. I am back to school, so while I'm gonna try and pump out a couple PBEM videos a month, or maybe at least once a month, I doubt I'll be able to do it at the same pace I was doing in the months previously. That being said, my battles will also usually become a little bit smaller. I've usually done battalion level engagements. This one is more or less a reinforced company. I have 6 T-34s, and then a squadron of Soviet Guards cavalry. And normally, I would say with a straight face that there's really no advantage in taking Soviet cavalry over a Soviet rifle unit. The platoons are much smaller, they're binary, which means you only have 2 squads. However, if you're doing a small unit engagement, especially this one, a medium engagement, and you need to work closely with tanks, Red Thunder of course has a tank rider system. The smaller platoon sizes means you could more easily marry a cavalry platoon to a T-34 platoon. And of course they have a couple other things going for them. Most importantly is they have an organic submachine gun platoon, which means you don't have to muddle up your command and control by taking a separate submachine gun formation. And my submachine gun platoon is actually mounted right here on this T-34 section, with a general platoon with an attached machine gun section riding in the center. And the terrain is, pretty typical Eastern Front. If you guys have been playing Black Sea, this will look very familiar to you. Battlefront tries to reuse and recycle as much as it can, and rural Ukraine is rural Ukraine, whether it's 2015 or 1944. There is a small town, and more so than the objective itself, I think the small town will probably become the focus of the fighting. My enemy is probably going to be mobile. It's a meeting engagement. There's usually no excuse for taking a dismounted foot element in meeting engagements. The general plan is to gun my submachine gun platoon up the road with the 2 tanks, try and get them into this tree line, and at least get Overwatch onto the village, or see if they can't get a foothold in the village itself. This is ambitious, but with a submachine gun platoon, you have to use shock action. I intend to get them up front as close as possible, and even if it turns out to be a disaster, it has a tactical advantage of keeping my enemy in one place for any length of time. I'm not expecting anything heavier than a Panther in an engagement like this, which is still relatively worrying, but not too much. The big cats don't frighten me too much. He gets a Tiger. Tigers are rather tough to take out, but they're expensive, they cost a lot of rarity. It means he'll be limiting himself in other ways. I'm going to be avoiding this open ground. The plan here is to, I do have an attached anti-tank gun platoon. I'm going to use the anti-tank guns to set up a crossfire, and then I have a dismounted platoon with the other half of the machine gun platoon, get them in this tree line. Their goal initially is to just lock down this side of the map. I might leapfrog from tree line to tree line and push in if my enemy doesn't probe here too much. I have an organic platoon of mortars on the field deployed. They are my only artillery support. Again, it's a small engagement. The real plan is to push frontally. There's actually a lot of dead ground here with this little outfit, and then, like I said, try and hook right as fast as possible and get into this tree line. So let's see how it goes. I like playing as the Soviets. I don't find them flexible. You have units that are meant to accomplish one thing and one thing very well. It's not like an American rifle platoon in Normandy that you can kind of bounce between defensive and offensive action easily. You can get creative. You can split teams if the troops are regular and above. This one, You can split the teams, but like the Syrians and Shock Force, it's not usually a good idea. So we probably won't be seeing as much of the fancy squad level maneuvering I strive to accomplish. And more likely than not, as is custom with the Eastern Front, this will turn into a bloodbath, win or lose, so should be an exciting one. Me about 3 minutes to cross the field. My submachine gun platoon actually briefly spots an enemy, and I've got vehicle audio. There's a Marder 3 that gets spotted, and it's promptly taken out with only 2 shots by this T-34 here. So it's fairly obvious that he's moving a little bit slower than I am. I'm hoping, because of the point-blank nature of the engagement forming here, my submachine gun platoon will have an advantage. But, I mean, it's only a Marder 3 knockout. I'm not really sure what else he might have. It seems like most of his units are concentrated around the village. Probably enemies in the tree line to my left is a safe assumption. So like I said, looks like the early fighting is going to happen around the tree line and the village itself. Underestimated how quickly my enemy was moving. Although I got into the tree line, it looks like, from what I see this turn, he got into the tree line as fast as I did. There's a motor pool here. It's all dismounted, and as I'm breaking from cover to get into buildings, I'm trying to get into this barn, trying to move forward here, moving forward in fire teams, protecting my T-34's open flank. I get 2 casualties inflicted in this fire team here from unknown forces, probably point blank in the tree line. And I actually get shot up by a machine gun from the same rough area from this potential contact. And then I get a Panzerschreck, a very inaccurate Panzerschreck, get fired at my T-34. So this turn does not go my way whatsoever. However, that being said, I've only taken 4 casualties, and it looks like I kind of have my enemy in an awkward position. I can kind of, exit the tree line. I do have 2 tanks, and I'm a submachine gun platoon. It's good to remember. I'm small, but I have a lot of compact firepower, so I'm not too worried about this. The guys are, the teams that have taken casualties are shaken, but they're not panicking, which means they should get themselves under control relatively quickly. And I'm hoping if I can actually break this machine gun team into this hut, get it on the 3rd floor perhaps, with the DP there and the tank there, should be able to lock down any further movement into the tree line. As for the enemies moving down the tree line, that might be a little bit more problematic. We'll see what we can do. as the turn develops, the firefight over here stabilizes somewhat. I'm able to get the torn up squad into cover, and I inflict canceling casualties. I spot movement in this tree line, and it's immediately taken under heavy fire by this platoon, who shake out into a skirmish line and the T-34s. Most importantly, Martyr 3 appears in this copse of trees and is promptly taken out by my anti-tank gun, kind of proving the wisdom in using these two anti-tank guns as flank guard. Now, there's another one here, but I believe it's tracked, that'll be taken out at the beginning of the next turn, hopefully. My main problem area is I don't want to get pushed out of this tree line. It looks like the Germans were retreating, so things have kind of stabilized. Maybe I'm going to probably call in mortars in this copse of trees in the flank.
Машина по курсу.
Корректируйте огонь. Корректируйте огонь. Корректируйте огонь. Отбой. Корректируйте.
So despite the heavy casualties my submachine gun platoon initially takes, it looks like this new setup here has more or less stabilized the enemy's advance. He keeps pushing in, taking a lot of fire from the SMGs, and then pulling back. And I have a clear idea more or less now where I think it's a platoon is. It's in this little curve here in this forest, which is under, or about to be under, heavy mortar fire. More importantly, with this platoon having established fire superiority for little cost, I'm able to advance the tanks closer to the tree line. I'm going to start spraying this tree line down, and as I said earlier, I have infantry coming down through this dead ground, and they'll be able to clear out the other side of the road as well. Once the mortars shellac this tree line, I'll begin a full assault, and we'll see if we can't get around the Panther that was spotted over here. With tanks, and with the submachine gun team ostensibly covering their flank, this cavalry platoon begins to move towards this tree line and little hill with the objective of taking it. I do take Panther Strike fire, it's inaccurate, and it's very good I decided to launch my attack at this point, because at the end of the turn, the ridge they were providing the base of fire from gets hit hard by artillery, and this little medic team doesn't make it. I am taken in the flank by MG fire from here, and as the turn ends, this squad, or what's left of it, is reacting to that fire, while the rest of the platoon is pushing up unmolested, I'm probably going to swing around and try and fight. Fighting in tree lines is very, very difficult in Red Thunder, but with the use of high explosives, I should be able to clear out what's left of this tree. Unfortunately, the attack on the hill does not go as planned. The headquarters and the second squad turn about and put fire down on this tree line with effect. However, I make the mistake of splitting this squad into two fire teams and attempting to immediately attack when I should have stopped to look and listen. And I lose 3 men in seconds flat. So it looks like this tree line has become an impasse for both players. Neither of us have been able to push through it or secure it with any success. However, I'm still confident that I've got the bulk of my enemy's forces tied down, and his artillery barrage, quite a heavy one, more or less misses, hits air. I manage to escape with only a handful of casualties in the machine gun team. As well, the other platoon of the company is able to get into this tree line unmolested, and I acquire targets here as it turn ends. The plan now, especially since we have movement coming out of the town, is to hold along the tree line, because I don't have the strength to take it at the moment. Try and get my armor concentrated to flank, and shift the onus of my attack to the left side of the road. The movement to the high ground goes without a hitch, essentially, and it looks like my enemy realizes he's in danger of being overrun, as the platoon, or what's left of it, begins pulling back. I've started pushing the platoon, at least the rightmost one, because my leftmost one is securing casualties under the cover of MG fire, and only take a single loss from sniper fire in the town itself, which isn't a big deal. All it tells me is that he's holding the town, as I figured he would be. The platoon that was moving to the left flank fans out along the ridge. Most of them are in hull-down positions. They begin to basically hit anything in the open. The Panther was last seen maneuvering, I suppose, towards the high ground, but I wasn't able to get a shot on it. I'm confident that it won't be able to do much. My T-34s are in good positions and have high ground. 3 against 1 is a pretty ideal ratio as well. Takes a hit and the commander is killed. It's not knocked out rather, and it pops smoke and it manages to evade follow-up fire. And then, unfortunately, my platoon leader's tank that gets a hit is knocked out by light fire from the forest it's standing in, which makes me think that there's either another Panther, God forbid, or more likely that my enemy has another Panzer II on the loose. Bit embarrassing to lose a T-34 to a Panzer II, but it's the only thing, shit happens. I also lose a tank commander. It was a risk for the unbuttoning, and of course the T-34 immediately exacts revenge. I'm pretty comfortable with the situation, although losing a T-34 and having another one dismounted was not my idea of success. The plan now is to deal with the incoming threat to the left, and perhaps shorten my flank up a bit and stick to the original of hopping in from tree line to tree line. Smoke is coming in on this edge of town, and the infantry will wait in the tree line until that comes in. It turns out that whatever disabled my T-34 a couple turns ago is actually a 4th Marder III. And I'm able to take it out before it maneuvers into a new firing position. At the same time, my platoon, or at least the lead platoon, is slowly hunting forward through the forest, pushing out stragglers. And this forest is more or less cleared of enemy. The Panther is still clearly operational. It takes a pot shot at a dismounted T-34 and misses. The plan now is to wait for my smoke rounds, as you can see they're already falling there, to fully develop, and then to use this dead ground to try and get a foothold into town. Hopefully, I'll be able to knock out that Panther definitively, and then 2 T-34s should be enough to support the attack on the town proper. The 32nd minute of the match actually turns out to be its final. I don't know if I've mentioned it, you have to forgive me, I've been recording this over many days, but a few turns ago I actually issued my ceasefire, based on the assumption that I would rout the Germans out of this tree line, but I wouldn't have the strength and ammunition to carry my attack into the village. I had been preparing for an attack into the village proper. I had been smoking the gully I intended to move into. I was putting harassing fire down. But it turns out as the turn ends, my opponent accepts the ceasefire, and I'm awarded a minor victory. And it turns out once I get a look at the map, I'm actually fairly confident I made the right choice to issue a ceasefire, because pushing into the town, while I don't doubt it would have been successful, would have resulted in ridiculous losses to a company of infantry that has already had 2 platoons effectively knocked out. So I win a minor victory. Certainly not my best performance, but it's a hard-fought battle. I have secured the objective, although the game doesn't award it to me, probably because there's there's a small fire team in the corner of the objective. Technicalities, I guess. But yeah, I've secured the objective more or less, and I've inflicted a greater share of casualties. I have established a greater kill ratio, a favorable kill ratio over the enemy, which is good, especially considering I made a lot of tactical errors. And the first one is on the right side tree line. I don't doubt pushing my submachine gun platoon with a tank platoon up to that tree line was the right idea, but I should have thrown a dragnet and deployed in a line and then blind fired the tree line, used mortars. You shouldn't push into a tree line without overwhelming fire support, and then from there you should be pushing out small teams and flush them out. That's what I did on the left side of the road with far better success. I also, had 2 platoons and plenty of firepower. It's the firepower imbalance that is really necessary, in my view, to take a tree line.